Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Town Hall Zoom for parents of Sac State students. Thank you so much for joining us. These have been really great, actually, to stay in touch with everyone. So, as usual, we'll do some updates at first, and then we'll have time for a Q&A at the end. And we're actually going to have a guest. We'll have someone from financial aid. The assistant director, Pavan Wallace, is going to join us at 1:45. So I know we've had a lot of financial aid questions. So first of all, thank you for attending. My name is Haley Myers Dillon. I'm the director of the Parents and Families program. So we finally got an answer to the fees question for all of you that have been on the edge of your seat. And if you read the newsletter, you read the update, which is no, the fees will not be different for the fall. So that's been something we've really been wondering about. We've actually in the past got some different information about, and now we know fees will not be different for the fall. Also, in the email that I sent out, I sent some messages about kind of a lot about housing. We had a lot of Q&A about housing, and we had the Senior Associate Director, Samuel Jones, join us on the last Zoom to talk about housing. And he wanted to clarify some things. So I'm going to quickly tell you what he wanted to clarify. Basically, housing is open on campus for the fall, if you are interested in that. If you have applied for fall and you do not want to live on campus and your student has not been offered a room, you can cancel your housing application and you can get the $250 fee back. In terms of spring semester, you do need to reapply. Like if your student wants to live on campus for spring, it's going to be a second application. If your student is going to live on campus in the fall, then you don't have to reapply in the spring for them to stay. So those are pretty good, quick clarifications. Let's see, I wanted to let you know, I've actually been hearing from a lot of you outside of these Zooms. So I've been getting a lot of emails from parents and actually connecting with a lot of your students. And the most common question that I've been getting is about registration for classes in the fall. And so the questions that I've been getting mostly from students is what classes do they need to take to be strategic, to make sure that they're checking off the requirements for their degree, and hey Kelly, nice to see you, requirements for their major. And I mean, the information is always in their student center. I think students continue to be surprised by this little box that's called the Academic Requirements tab. But just so you know, if your student has a question about what classes they need to take next, if their major is listed correctly on their student center, they can go to a little box that says Academic Requirements, and it will show them for their whole career at Sac State. We will be talking about financial aid, by the way. We'll have a guest come on at 1:45. It's been actually really nice to talk with the students. I've been Zooming with them from their various locations, and you know, they are just as uncomfortable with the virtual semester and just as uncomfortable with the uncertainty as we are. Yeah, everybody wants more answers. let's see. Oh, the other question that I get from students that's very common that I want to share with you is about timing, about why maybe they cannot register at a particular time. They're looking, they want to change their schedule maybe, and then they cannot. And I want to show you something called the academic calendar. You may know it, so if this is, review for you, then that's okay. But I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you where you can find the academic calendar for Sac State. This will be helpful for you and for your student. So here is the homepage for Sac State. And what I'm going to do is type into the search calendar. And then click the little search button. It's the second one that comes up that says academic calendars. And then here at the top, we want to select the accurate semester, so for fall. And this is a list of important dates. So we're in June, and we see that if your student is a continuing student, they've already been attending at Sac State, that they just had from June 1 through June 5 to change their classes. And if you've been coming to these Zooms regularly, we talked about that short period. Now, they don't get to change their schedule again until August 10th. And that tells us right here, open registration. The reason is because orientation is happening, but it's that's quite a while for them to wait to change their schedule. So we can also see here's a late registration and schedule adjustment, August 31st through September 11th. We can see the first day of classes. We can see Labor Day, all the holidays. So this is probably going to be relevant to you as, you plan the semester and when students are home. Thanksgiving holiday, please note, it's pretty short. It's just Thursday and Friday technically that we're off, although many faculty members choose to not have class during Thanksgiving week. So for those of you planning ahead. Okay, so I got a great question. I got a great question from a parent, and Lori, I will get to your question in a moment. And the question was, could you talk about how professors might be adjusting courses in the fall given virtual learning, and how are they adapting given the training that they're given right now this summer? Laura, are you on the call or on the Zoom? Laura Gary, just curious.
I am. I'm sorry. Hi, Haley.
Hi, good. Okay, thanks for your question.
My kid is here giving me instructions on how to get myself sorted on Zoom. I apologize.
Oh, no, great. So glad you're here. So Laura just shot me an email and said, hey, I really want you to talk about how, how are instructors being trained, what's going to be different for virtual semester this fall. So here are some things you can expect. One is an increased use of Canvas. So Canvas is it's an academic tool. If your student hasn't shown you Canvas, they can. Smart Thinking, this is online tutoring. We talk about this to the students. It's available 24 hours a day. They can get help. And then they would log in and they can get help 24 hours a day through Smart Thinking. Apparently my browser is not supported. Okay, so that's a little bit about Canvas. So what else can you expect from teachers? So increased use of Canvas, fewer synchronous classes. What does that mean? Students are expected to show up at 11 a.m. and stay to 1 p.m. We're going to see less of that. It's easier for students often to, if they have a class that's scheduled, to have asynchronous classes where they can attend at other times and do the work on their own. And maybe the professor has recorded a lecture. Maybe they have other content, like go watch these videos on your own, that are posted in Canvas. Other essential components of virtual instruction that faculty are learning to work in are more breaks and more focus blocks. So basically taking a concept and covering something in 20 to 30 minutes, and then asking the student to, step away from the Zoom session and do something related to applying what they just learned, come back and share in small groups. That would be a focus block. More breaks would be, get up, stretch, short breaks. Those are for the synchronous classes. I think we will expect more activities and more innovation from faculty members. And also we are going to see, where it's possible, more connection in coursework to what's happening in the real world and the bigger context. So that's a little bit of what you can expect for virtual semester adaptations. It's good for, I think, faculty with a lot of new energy and new ideas, and probably is making some faculty uncomfortable who've been doing the same thing for many semesters and are forced to change it up. Okay, so we have some great questions in the chat. I see them, but we have also invited the Assistant Director of Financial Aid to join us. And I just wanted to check in and see, Pavan, are you on here?
I am. I've been silently listening.
Okay.
I was here.
Well, thanks for coming. We're just doing some basic updates about campus and sharing with the parents what's going on. But we've had a lot of questions about financial aid. So I was wondering if you could give us a general sort of like overview of where financial aid is at Sac State. Are you working from home? And then if there's any changes to federal or state grants or awards, or the processing timeline given COVID. We'll start there.
Sure. So I'm Pavan Wallace. I'm working out of this lovely office. No, that's just a background. We are actually working remotely. So we are open. We've been remote like most of the campus as of mid-March. So like everybody else, it's a different world, a lot of changes that everybody's had to adjust with and adjust to. We have worked really hard to make sure that we are staying on track and delivering financial aid to our students. The process, how it works, and where you may want to gauge in terms of if you are a family who's looking for financial aid for the upcoming academic year, is that it all starts with the student completing their financial aid application. When they complete that application, they're indicating Sac State is one of the schools that they're planning or interested in if you filed much earlier. We get all of that information electronically. So if at that point the student has been admitted, we get the financial aid application, that kind of sets the ball in motion. If there are some documentation that's needed for us to really determine a student's financial aid eligibility, students are informed via email to look at their student center. So as Haley was going over Canvas, and whether your student has shared that with you or not, Student Center is where they're getting a lot of their information, not just tied to academics, but even what they owe, what is needed for them to submit, whether it's for admissions office, whether it's for the financial aid office. So as they go to the Student Center, to the far right middle section, it'll say to-do list, and you're able to expand on that. And that's where most of our communication happens in terms of, here's the 3 documents that you need to submit to us. It'll give you a description of what that is. A lot of our student forms are e-forms, meaning there's no downloading that needs to happen. They log in with their student log authentication. They authenticate themselves, and they're able to complete that form and submit it online. So it is easy as that. If there's any documentation they need to submit, there is a space within the Student Center where they're able to upload the document. So let's say something that requires your signature, you're able to complete, you're able to upload it. So it doesn't require having to mail it in or fax it or bringing it in any other way. So what we rely on is documentation if something is requested to be provided to our office in a timely fashion, and then we're reviewing students in the date order that the documentation is being submitted. What we do for incoming students, especially when they're waiting to make that decision, which school I'm going to attend, and financial aid clearly is a big determining factor before they make that commitment, is that we will go ahead and start to review documents that have been submitted as students are also signing up for orientation. And then once we've processed all of that documentation, sometimes it requires us to consider income information that was reported on the financial aid application versus the actual tax transcripts, household information, something of that nature, right? It allows us to award financial aid, and once again, they're notified. Once they're notified, it goes back to the student center. In the middle section, you can say view financial aid, accept or decline financial aid, and that's where you're able to see, okay, it'll give you a synopsis of what it looks like for the year. It'll give you a breakdown what it looks like per semester. So as you're trying to budget, here's what we need to pay towards fees. Here's what we need to pay towards books. Do we have enough coming in, to kind of go through that exercise. For our continuing students, we wait to run annual SAP check, which we are looking at the students' academic progress before those students start to get awarded, and that's going to be happening in the next week or so. As far as processing timelines, we, again, as I mentioned earlier, a student who gets their documents to us on June 1st is going to be given priority over somebody who submitted on June 15th, right? That's the most fairest way that we can do that. So that's our commitment. Summer is our peak period because we're gearing up financial aid for thousands of students for the fall semester. Typically, our processing timeframes will run 4 to 6 weeks. It's usually below that, but it can be within that time frame if the documentation that was submitted was not complete. We had to come back and ask for clarification. So it's really important to understand what's being requested and submit it as soon as possible to avoid those type of delays. What am I missing, or are there questions that have come up tied to financial aid, Haley?
There are. So
Okay.
we had a question about installment payment plan, which I think I got answered. But why don't you mention what that is, just in case
Sure.
not everyone knows what it is.
So installment payment plan is where, there are going to be families who may have options, financial aid options that are loans. I think most of us are averse to, taking out loans, and I'm in the same boat, right? So if a family's financial aid option is only loans, there are other ways to perhaps look at how do you break out your tuition registration fees that are due for the fall semester in an installment payment plan. So that's what that refers to. What'll happen, your student will log into their student center. We always go back to that student center. They're able to enroll in the installment payment plan, and their registration fees will be broken out into 3 payments. So not all of it's due at one time. In a portion, and then so that's actually the bursar's office. So once you apply for the installment payment plan, they will review it. They'll place the student on that installment payment plan, and you'll be able to see with your student what the due dates are for each one of those portion and the amount for each portion. So then that allows you to say, okay, in August, I need to make sure that I'm paying I'm making numbers up totally, $1,200 by, August 10th. September 10th, the amount is the same or it's a little bit different, but it allows you to see that all the way through for the payments that it's been broken out into.
Thanks, Pavan.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question about when should they expect to see their FAFSA awards if they got all their paperwork in by March 2nd?
If everything was submitted by March 2nd, the students should have seen. If nothing else was required by us, or even if something was required by us and it was submitted in March, by now we should see a financial aid award because we're into late June. If you have not heard anything from financial aid whatsoever, so your student logs into their student center under the financial aid section, it doesn't show anything, I'm going to ask that you talk with your son or daughter and take a look to see if they added Sac State as the institution they want the information to go to, because sometimes that'll be a miss, is that they've applied and they've applied on time, they haven't heard anything from us. It could be Sac State school code wasn't added, so we just don't have that information. But if that's the case, it's okay. Just go log back in, have them update the school code, and we'll get that information transmitted to us within 3 to 5. We'll pick it up from there and move forward with the awarding piece.
Thanks. We've got a question from Andrea in the chat. She wants to know when the middle class scholarship is awarded and when they can apply. How does that work, Pavan, the middle class scholarship?
Good question. So actually, I'll go back just a second. So the sheer act of applying or completing a financial aid application puts the student in the pool to be considered for the different types of financial aid funding, including middle class scholarship. What I mean by that is that it's the financial aid application that collects income information, students' grade level, and it allows the federal processor and at the state level, if it's a DREAM Act application that's been submitted, to come up with the figure, which is called expected family contribution. That number is the one that drives the type of aid a student is going to get and the amount of aid students going to get.
So let 36. Okay. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was talking to my mom. Sorry.
That's okay. Did you? Okay. So for middle class scholarship, it's actually California Student Commission that determines whether a student is eligible, and if they are, the amount that they're eligible for. But the school's responsibility, which we start to do, we send enrollment files. So once the students are enrolled early August, we will let California Student Aid Commission know, here's all of our students who are enrolled. And then they're going to say, oh, okay, you've got Haley, you've got Pavan. They're both eligible for middle class scholarship. And here's the amount for Haley, here's the amount for Pavan. And they'll send that information back to us. But middle class scholarship is a scholarship that gets added.
Financial aid.
I have no class scholarship.
I know, but you need to reapply again.
Okay.
I'm going to mute them.
That gets added once we get that confirmation from CSAC. So California Student Aid Commission, we call them CSAC. They are the entity who has to let us know who's are eligible, the amounts that they're eligible for. So middle class scholarship in that sense gets added in as we move into late August, even into early September. So that's an award you will see a little bit later on.
Thanks. Let's see here. So someone is asking, they want to be able to speak with a human being on the phone. Is there a telephone number that they can reach?
Yes. So our phones, so we've been open in a little bit of a different way. And what I mean by that is that the Student Service Center is, so the number is 916-278-1000. That's the number you would call. The other, and what you will get, what Student Service Center provides is information on all the general questions. We have a great team who's able to assist you. We also have what we call drop-in counseling sessions available. This is where via Zoom, Student Service Center staff, they can answer all the questions, but let's say you have something a little bit more detail-oriented that perhaps they're unable to answer, you'll get signed up to see a financial aid counselor. So we have our team rotates through that drop-in counseling. That's Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So that's another way to do that. So even if you were to send an email out to the Student Service Center, they will provide you with what the login instructions are for the Zoom calls for that day. So that's another way to get in touch with someone and have this type of conversation in a one-on-one environment via Zoom.
Thank you. So we actually have two people, Pavan, who are certain that they have all the paperwork in on time, that the Sac State code was put in the right way, and they still don't have anything in the financial aid award.
So what's the best way for us to, Haley, are they able to send you a note and then you can certainly loop me in?
Yeah, that's probably great.
Okay.
Why don't, for those of you who are concerned about your student's financial aid award, please send me an email, haley.myers@csus.edu. I'll type it in the chat. With your student's name. If you have their student ID, that's the most helpful, but if you don't have it, their birthday. And then we'll, and what your concern is, and we'll get it to Pavan.
Yeah, and if I may add to that, so, and this is, I'm a parent of a freshman in college, so I'm with you in this. What's hard is that once the student becomes our student, they are the customer, right? So we also need to make sure that we have the authorization to be able to talk to you on their behalf. So Haley, I think it's important to note that we would need a FERPA on file to be able to share that information with the parent that reaches out. So that's an important part for us to mention. Yeah.
I had a question, Pavan. When did the 20 to 21 financial aid application open? Which might be a question about the next year or maybe this year also.
Sure. The application, it used to open in January. So, but about 3 years ago, at the Department of Education level, we went this prior year concept, and that was really to assess financial aid eligibility, not on the fiscal year that just passed, but the year prior to that, right? So now the application's open October 1, and the priority timeline to file by is March 2nd. So 10/1 through March 2nd. So it's a 6-month window. It used to be a 3-month window that students have to file on time. You can still continue to file. So if we have anybody in the audience who hasn't completed their financial aid application, you can still certainly do that. It's the priority date becomes really important for a lot of the state aid that we have because it's limited funding, whereas federal source is a little bit different and it's unlimited funding. State is limited, so March 2nd date becomes really critical. But if you have not filed, I highly encourage you to do so still. Because technically for the 2021 year, a student can file their financial aid application through next June 30th. I know it's crazy, but that is the final filing date.
I am looking to see if we have any other questions. Does anyone have any questions that haven't been addressed in terms of financial aid? Let's see. Kathy Foley does. What's up, Kathy? I can unmute you. You want to talk?
Yeah, last summer during orientation, my son was a transfer student, and they filled out a form called Through and To. And so my son is taking summer classes now. He took winter classes. So my understanding was that the tuition cost was reduced in the summer classes for that Through and To, but it didn't seem like it was any different where he went to make his payments.
Pavan, I think she's talking about the Provost Summer Incentive Grant.
That's what I'm thinking too. So Kathy, this is, the information for that doesn't lie within financial aid because we're not determining that piece. That's certainly something we can follow up on, but I wouldn't have that information readily available to myself as it's not being determined within the financial aid office. So if you want to email Haley, because you shared your email address, again, your student's name and ID, or even ask your son to do that, because again, we're going to have to make sure that there's a FERPA release on file for us to be
Right.
able to respond to parents' questions before we can do that. And if he doesn't have on file for any of the other parents, if they don't have one on file, you can certainly encourage them to do so. That allows us to be the ability to talk to you at length in terms of the questions you may have on their behalf.
Okay, I had one other quick question. All last year, we were able to do the installment plan because I do it, pay out of pocket, but it didn't let us do that this summer for the fall. My son said there was no choice to do the installment, so he had to put it all on my credit card. And I would have
Did you say
preferred
for
to
summer?
have, huh?
Did you say for summer or for
No,
fall?
for the fall. So he said the payment seemed like it was sooner this year than last year, and it didn't allow for the installment plan.
He just has to re-sign up for the installment payment plan. You
Uh,
have to do it like every year.
Oh, okay. So if they already charged it to my credit card, can you go back?
If the fees are paid at this point, there's not a way to go back.
Okay.
But if that's something you're going to look into for the spring semester, it'll just be, signing up for the installment payment plan again. And then for spring, you can break out your
Okay.
fees. Yeah.
Okay. I guess we've been doing this all years. Fall, winter, spring, and the summer. So didn't realize you had to do it all over again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate your help.
Sure.
So I'm trying to keep up with the chats here. So where would you find the installment payment plan? Your student has to do it through their student center. And I actually had Emily post it up. Like if you scroll in the chat, it's posted toward the top from 1:49 p.m. There's a link that shows you how to. And Emily, if you get a moment, can you please also put the FERPA waiver, a link to the FERPA waiver on here? Someone is asking, Pavan, do you have a couple more minutes for questions?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I asked Pavan to stay until 2, so we're over her time.
No, you're fine.
Someone was asking, let's see here. Maria is saying, if we are not getting any financial aid and waiting on the middle class scholarship, if we qualify, do we register for classes and pay them in full or make a payment plan? Oh, okay. I can answer that. Okay. So your student, hopefully your student, hey Maria, can you hear me? Okay, Maria, did your student fill out a FAFSA? Yes, okay. So just by filling out the FAFSA, your student's fees are deferred until September. So your student will register for classes, and after they register, the first payment will not be due until September. In that time, after your student registers, the cost will appear in the student center, and your student should sign up for the installment payment plan. So it's broken into 4 payments. Okay, Pavan, I think if anyone has anything urgent, go ahead and unmute yourself. Otherwise, we're going to let Pavan go, and we'll talk a little bit about housing.
May I just expand on something about the fee deferment, Haley? So I think it's as you sit down with your student and look at their student center, if you look in the hold section and if your student has a fee deferment, that's an indication that their fees are deferred so if you open up that box, it's going to give you the text that explains what a fee deferment is, and it'll have a date in terms of until when their fees are delayed. So, you know, for as we've been talking about installment payment plan, actually that question was great because it reminded me to share that with the group, is to look to see if your student has that hold tied to fee deferment. That tells you that while the fee due date will be such, you technically have a deferment delaying or postponing the fee due date until that date. So that's really critical.
Thank you,
Okay.
Pavan.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Good luck, everybody.
Thanks so much for joining.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, Kathy, I wanted to address one thing about the Provost Summer Incentive Grant.
Yeah.
So the amount varies, and it varies by the number of units your student has accrued. So the closer, it's supposed to incentivize graduation. So the closer your student is to graduation, the more money they get. The maximum award a student who is the closest to graduation could get is around, I want to say it's in the $800 range. I can't remember if it's like 800 or 890. There's a big difference there. But I'll tell you, for students who do get the lowest amount for the Provost Summer Incentive Grant, it's in the $200 range. So when you're looking at thousands of dollars and summer school is run through College of Continuing Education, it's more expensive than regular school. Yeah, $200 isn't going to look like much off of a, $3,000 bill. So
Yeah.
that could be it. But if there's a little, in the financials tab, he would see, like in his student center, he would see it would say Provost Summer Incentive Grant, and it would have an amount.
Provo, like PROBO?
PROVO. I'll type it in the chat.
Okay.
Well, we've got an awful lot of questions about housing. So a lot of people want to know when will they know if their student has a spot for fall? I don't know. So has anyone, I'm going to ask you to either type in the chat or unmute. Has anyone received, if you want housing on campus for the fall, do you have that? Do you have a room? Yes? Okay.
You have a room, right?
I can't see your name because you don't have it on there, but I think you have your hand up like this and you have glasses. What's your name?
Hi, how are you? My name's Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
So I actually spoke to Mr. Jones because there's a lot of questions on the chat, and if I may, if it's okay, can I just inform you what he told me? Is that okay if I just inform the group? Or
Sure.
So basically, thank you for taking my question. So my daughter is an upper class student. She's going to be almost a senior this year, and she's been in Riverview Hall for the last 3 years. She has a confirmed room for the fall, but what he explained to me, due to the COVID situation, because even though she has a confirmed room, there really isn't a guarantee, even though we got a confirmation, because of the social distancing that's going on, and the housing department has got to work all that out. So even though we have a room on our student center that says that we have a confirmed date and everything, that he said that might even change based on the new guidelines with the COVID. The other thing he explained to me was, because we have a room, he told me that if we're not going to be there in the fall, that we should consider canceling the application and just reapplying in the spring. But he told me that there was no guarantee that we would get a room in the spring if we cancel in the fall, because there's, it's a first come, first served basis, basically. So the questions that I had for him, is there going to be any priority for upperclassmen, students who have lab-based majors, things like that? Like my daughter is a microbiology major, and all of her classes, unfortunately, are online this fall, and she has a lab that's in person. And because of that, we're going to cancel her application, and she's going to take that class again in the spring, because it doesn't make fiscal sense to be in the housing just for one class. That makes no sense at all. So she's going to drop that and probably reapply in the spring. But that's a lot of information, but that's what he told me. I know it's so stressful for all of the parents. So I really appreciate the meeting and just any information, but the housing situation is so stressful for everybody. You know, we live really far away. There's no way my daughter could commute. So she has got to either live there or, you know, or stay home in the fall. I can't commute her back and forth for a lab class. So, you know, so that's kind of the information that I received. As far as canceling, we haven't done a darn thing yet because we're waiting for something official in the Sac State email or the housing office to tell us what to do. And there are a lot of parents who are in the same boat. So I'm going to put myself on mute and maybe you can kind of expand on what I just said.
Sure.
Thank
So-
you again.
Sure. Yes, I know it's tough with the uncertainty. So I'm going to actually address a question I've gotten a few times from parents in terms of living on campus. Why would someone live on campus if the classes are virtual? One reason is student athletes. So student athletes who often get a scholarship are living on campus, and they will have socially distanced practices. And I think they're going approving sport by sport who can practice, and golf, for instance, is approved. Another example I want to share is just last night this is orientation season, and we're welcoming new parents into Sac State with their students. And I had a orientation session for Spanish-speaking families last night. And we had a family join. They live in Mexico, and their daughter is a first-time freshman. And she will be moving to Sacramento while her parents stay in Mexico. And she'll be living on campus at Sac State with a virtual semester. And I know, I was like, oh, wow. You know, they're doing a lot for their daughter's education. And so I know that housing is working hard to create a sort of campus life that they can have, given, you know, it's kind of like us right now, given how everything is. So the state is opening. We're supposed to wear masks. Do I go to a restaurant? Some restaurants are open. Don't I? Campus is going to be a little bit like that too. So campus is trying to decide for the students who live there what sort of food situation is going to be offered. Dining. Is the dining hall open? They're trying to get numbers. They're trying to gauge demand. How many people are going to be here? If there's enough people, then they may have the dining commons open, but then they'll have to operate it like a restaurant where they, you know, do the social distancing. So it's kind of tough. Like, it's very tough to gauge demand right now. I also had, in terms of answering that question, why would someone do a virtual, live on campus if all the classes are virtual? I also had a mother tell me that she felt that her daughter living on campus was the safest environment for her daughter. And she wanted to do everything she could to make sure her daughter stayed on campus. So I don't know what's happening in that household, right? But if her mom thinks that it's safest for her to be on campus, that's another reason someone might be on campus. Okay. I think if you have a particular question about housing that you have not gotten an answer to, you can email housing@csus.edu. That is an option. Socially distanced housing is happening. So I think that I really think the question of roommates, there's not going to be like 3 or 5 person suites. I don't think there's going to be roommates. Now, siblings is interesting. I've had a few people talk with me about having siblings move together. Apparently, that's something they're considering, which kind of makes sense, right? They're living at home together, go to campus together. That's some sort of special scenario. But in general, I think it's going to be single rooms. Also, if you're not an email sort of person, Luis has Zoom sessions posted on the csus.edu/housing site. And you can basically make a live phone call through Zoom and talk with him. And he's really great at answering. That's what I would recommend. Let's see. I'm looking in the chat to see if we have any other questions. Kathy is asking, we had issues with off-campus housing during COVID. Is there any reimbursement for a student that had to leave housing in March due to lack of distancing? So Kathy, I'm guessing that's for, you said off-campus, right? We've had really tough.
It's Lark.
Yeah, you know, with Lark, Crossings, Phoenix, these off-campus private places, I have not heard good news about them refunding anything or forgiving contracts or letting students get out of leases. So
Yeah, it's challenging. We had to deal with bed bugs. So my son was with me for 6 weeks. He was only back a few weeks in his apartment when the COVID stuff happened. But, you know, they did nothing, you know, to help the students out. And yet it was a disgusting environment in there as well.
and that's really hard. I've even tried on my own time. I was working with two fathers one who was trying to get a refund and one who has a 1-year lease already signed for next year. And I was working with a state lobbying entity to try to get basically to force the cancellation and a refund. And I didn't get very far, I'll say that.
Okay, good to know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the devil's contract that you sign. You know, your kid can be dead and you still have to pay for the whole year. So I figured COVID, I didn't know if that was some other clause of unforeseen.
Right.
Yeah.
I see a question from someone, CC Sport. Is it possible to get housing without a meal plan? Not on campus. You got to get a meal plan to live on campus. You're considering paying for fall to secure the room for the spring. She will not be on campus in the fall to use the meal plan on a regular basis. Well, so, and there's not a lot of food available anyway. I kind of think, I don't know, CC Sport, is your student going to actually be living there? No. Well, I kind of think it's not so different from when students come in. So your student's going to be a junior. So I think it's not so different as the competition element that happens when students come in for the fall. You've got a whole bunch of people that want a limited amount of rooms. You've got a whole bunch of people that want a limited amount of, seats in a class. So I think there's still going to be a competition element. I think you just are like deferring the competition. If you really, really, really want to guarantee it, then I guess you can, but that's so much money. Okay, any questions? Any other questions? Unrelated. Somebody asked about forensic biology. Haven't heard back yet. I need to follow up. I will follow up.
Hi, this is Juanita Terry, and I already have 2 students there, and I have a freshman coming in. Now, the students that are there are working in the market. Do you recommend them move back on campus, or will the market be open, or we don't know?
I don't know. I think the market is going to be open.
Okay.
And they are, Juanita, are they all siblings? Yeah.
No, the ones that moving back in, and one of them and the freshman are siblings, and the other one is a good friend.
Okay.
But their rooms we've already heard that they have their rooms. We paid the money, and so they do have rooms. I did get confirmation that Joshua, the freshman, does have a room, and they also have a room. The other two people have rooms. They paid their money.
Wow, it's such a call, such a personal call. I think keeping the job at the market is important, right? I mean, obviously they need the money. You need the money. You want to keep them having employment history. Want to make sure they practice as great of, hand washing and mask practice and all of that they can. I mean, I would I don't know. I mean, there's so many people that are out there working and doing our food service.
Mhm.
I don't know how to make that recommendation. But what do
Okay.
what do your students think? Do they want to go?
They want to go, and now that the virus is spiking a little bit, we're thinking about it, but I think we just have to put it in God's hands and let them go if they want to go. And we just have to just practice the mask and the washing of the hands. That's just it.
I think understanding, having your students really understand. I think they probably understand how serious it is, but just making
Right.
sure that they're
Right.
doing the hand washing and the masks. The masks really seem to make a difference. And something the housing director mentioned that students don't always know is that you're supposed to change your mask every day.
Right.
And
Right.
so I know campus is trying to figure out, like, a whole bunch of programs are trying to come together and pool our money so we can buy masks for the students who are going to be living on campus, so they can have a different one every day.
Well, I don't have to worry. I know how to make them, so they have enough. So I got it going on. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Juanita.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Well, I feel like that's a good update for today. Let's see. Susanna is saying, when freshman parents are allowed to go drop off their students at campus, what nearby hotels would you recommend, coming from New Mexico? I guess the closest one is Larkspur Landing, but those are suite style and they can be a little pricey. Larkspur Landing is the closest, kind of expensive. Honestly, if I was looking for affordable, there's something called the Courtyard Marriott, and it's over by the UC Davis Med Center. It's not fancy, like, it's not in a great area. It's a hospital neighborhood, right? It's just kind of a yuck neighborhood, but it's decent rooms, decent price. Lori says Comfort Inn Suites is good. So I'm going to put in the chat, Courtyard Inn by UC Davis Med Center or Larkspur Landing. All right, everybody. How do students apply for campus jobs? I'm going to answer this last one, and then we're going to call it. But please email me your questions before, we don't have to wait until the next Zoom. You and I can have a meeting. We can talk. How do students apply for campus jobs? There is a website called, hey, Emily, what's our Hornet Career Connection? Is that what it's called?
We use Handshake now too.
Handshake. That's what it's called. So through the Career Center, there's a campus system called Handshake. And they will go in there, they will sign in with their ID, they'll be forced to upload a resume, which is great, right? Because they need a resume to apply. And they'll see the jobs that are available. Some of them are on campus and some of them are off campus. Virtual classes in spring. We'll know in October. Stay tuned. Okay, everybody. It's Friday. I hope you get to call it a day, get off the box, go outside, enjoy your lives. Thanks for coming. Great to see your faces. Thanks for supporting your students. Donna, I'm not sure we answered all your questions, but if you want to email or you want to have a Zoom, let's do it. Okay. Bye, everybody.